Hey guys! Hello. It is me, Sammy D. Let me see if anyone's jumping in the comments. Let me know that you guys are here, first of all. And if you are tuning into the replay, which I know a lot of you will most likely be tuning into the replay, let me know with hashtag replay gang. I've seen that quite a number of times. I'm watching the replay, whatever you want to say, just so I know that you had a chance to tune in. I am so happy that Ella Seat of Aerodite Vintage is giving us her time tonight. So this has been a conversation that we've been having for like 2 months. We started having this sort of brainstorming session around the idea of just sharing some wisdom that she has around vending at in-person markets. Ella is a veteran seller, not only in the vintage and luxe Boss Babes community, but she's a veteran vendor at in-person events. So what I love about just Ella's background is she really has a both and business where she's selling online, she's hosting live sales, and she's also selling in person. And now that we are in 2023, and I think the pandemic is kind of done, most of us are living our lives as we please. This is the first solid year of that mindset. I am personally seeing, I don't know about you guys, let me know in the comments, but I am personally seeing a ton of markets just popping up like popcorn. I actually went to one in Baltimore, and it was a vintage only market. It was at a brewery. There was food. There was a coffee truck. And oh my gosh, I spent like $250. And it felt so good to just go shop amongst the vendors and meet other like-minded people and like hang. So I don't know about your neck of the woods, but most likely there's a market near you or within driving distance that you can participate in the coming market seasons. So whether you're already selling at markets or you're thinking about it, stay on this live so that you can not only hear from Ella's wisdom, we have a lot to cover, but so that you can ask her pointed questions because she probably knows the answer to it. We were having a really quick behind the scenes conversation and Ella's like, oh, the things I have seen. So let her knowledge be your power, guys. So again, if you guys are tuning in, hi Mia, good to see you. If you're tuning in, let me know in the comments. And if you are if you have been a vendor at a market, I would love to hear in the comments as well. That just gives me a grasp. That gives us all a grasp over, who has experience. Hi, Kim. Awesome. We've got Mia saying hi. We have Kim saying hi. So again, we are about to hear from, I'm about to bring her on screen, the beautiful one of one Ella Seat. This is an amazing photo of her booth, and she's going to talk more about the merchandising of the booth, about signage, about what type of tent to get, which is actually very serious business. So we are about to have a really great conversation. So to kick us off, guys, hi, Joni. Awesome. Joni's tuning in. To kick us off, guys, can you please help me in welcoming Ella Seat to the screen? She's behind the scenes right now. She's ready to get on. So let us know in the comments that you are excited to have Ella on live tonight. Ella, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Like your SNL introduction. Ella of Aerodite Vintage performing live. Vintage Boss Babes.
Thank you, Sammy. I appreciate it. I've had like a lot of fun coming up with my notes for the past couple of days on this. I've never actually sat down and thought about like the process I went through to start vending at markets and the continuing journey that it is.
Yes.
I could talk about this for probably 3 hours, but I won't. Don't worry.
Well, if anyone needs consultation post session tonight, you can hire Ella, and she will give you even more information. Okay. So now that we're chatting, I want to know, because I actually don't know. I didn't ask you this. I was like, I'll just wait and hear. But how did you start vending at markets?
I started slow. When I started this business in 2016 in Chicago, and I didn't even get online until like 2018.
Wow.
To be honest.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
didn't even have a social presence until then. I was just slow, kind of selling my own personal collection. And I would do swaps and meetups and things like that and sell that way.
Okay. Swaps and meetups.
Yeah. And prior to the pandemic, I was just starting to kind of get my feet wet in the Chicago area, which is a whole different beast from, you know, where I am now, kind of traveling around and doing markets around the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
And so really I've been going hard on the market scene, very hard, for the past, since 2020, since summer of 2020. And I had done a lot of the prep and had started easing into the market scene in the city before the pandemic. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Great. So I would say that you really kicked it into high gear last year. About?
Yeah, I started publicizing my events last year for sure.
Okay.
2021. I mean, there were some great events in summer of 2020, but there were a lot of events that were canceled.
Yeah.
And I outdoors. I'm immunocompromised, so it's market vending was a great way to like get out and meet people without being indoors, and it's something that I've continued to do, and I prefer to vend outdoors for the most part. So 2021, summer of 2021, the scene was really back and was really really sceney.
Yeah, it was sceney.
Yeah. And then last summer I really just started publicizing more that I was doing markets. And this summer for the first time I'm going to start traveling a bit more. I had been kind of staying put while the pandemic was really raging. And last summer I started to travel a little bit, and this year I'm going a little bit harder on vending in other states. So I'm very excited.
And that is that's a topic of conversation. Okay. Must sell vintage will travel.
Yeah.
When to know that that's right for you. So before we jump into some like guys, we have some super laser questions that Ella's going to answer, but I did want her to give us almost like, let's throw us into the fire and just quickly go over, if you were considering being a vendor, if you were tuning in right now and you're like, okay, cool, I've been thinking about this. Ella, in your personal experience, what are some of the pros when it comes to selling at markets, and what are those cons that we just don't want to believe are there, but they're actually there?
They are there. Yeah, pros, definitely meeting your customer in person and seeing in real time what sells and what people actually get excited about. Like seeing people's facial expressions when they're like, oh my God, is really helpful, because you can look at your data for what's selling online, but you can't see the way the customers are reacting to things. And ultimately, retail is an emotional thing, right? And knowing what your customers' emotions are is very helpful in selling to them. So seeing those emotions play out in real time at markets is a lot of fun. You do get a better idea of, data online can tell you like what age group you're selling to, maybe, or like the location, but they can't tell you like, wow, these kind of kids with this aesthetic maybe are really buying this kind of thing, or like the folks that like this category are coming into my tent wearing this kind of thing. So if they bought that, maybe I should carry more of what they also wearing. So it can give you these insights that data really can't give you. So that's definitely a pro. I would say building a return customer base. I see people all the time, again and again, come back to even the same markets over and over. And there are people like here in my home state of Indiana, I vend a lot because my parents are here. I'll see people that come to every single market that I do in the city. They don't come for me, but they just go to every market. so you will see people again, and you'll make friends with some of your customers this way. And you'll be able to, once you're friendly with people, you're able to ask them questions that you're not able to ask to your online customers. And that's really helpful. And once people discover you at a market, they will find you online, as long as you have your branding in place and have something to hand them that has your information on it. So you can really build more of an online audience starting from markets. That said, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you really have to have that online presence in place first.
Yeah.
In order to get those return customers. So if you haven't done that, the time to do that really is before, and the time to brand your business, it really is before doing markets. I see a lot of vendors start to do markets and they don't have their branding in place, or maybe they change their name, they change other things, but they've already been doing markets for a while, and that can really confuse your customers. So I would recommend having all that in place, and of course that's an upfront commitment. And you know, but it doesn't have to be anything major. I actually don't have a crazy website. I just have a link tree and an that I can send people to, and it works for me. I also definitely just the upfront cost of materials, supplies. Just like with shipping, there are some things that you need to buy again and again. Bags for customers to take their orders in. You know, stickers. I always hand out stickers that have my information on the back. A little bit of a cost to that. Obviously, inventory can come and go very quickly.
Yeah.
During market season, so you should definitely have like a sourcing strategy in place, and maybe
Wait, are you telling us just to go thrift more? Okay, cool. I'm gonna be a vendor at a market.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of times, depending on where I am in market season, sometimes you get so busy that you can't thrift. So sometimes it's exploring other sources, potentially wholesale, potentially, you know, going to your local wholesaler or your local rag house and seeing what's going on there, seeing if you can buy in bulk. So it's something that you have to think about. Seasons can be very slow, and things can also go very quickly. You'll find out very quickly. Certain categories sell much more quickly at markets than they do online. So a con, I would say, is having to sort of keep the whole picture of the flow of your inventory in your head and really track it accurately. And I would say that I certainly have my inventory kind of siloed. Like I have my market inventory in one place, and I don't typically list it online because it's just too hard to physically keep track of it. And it's, you know, it's people want different things at different markets, and often the things that I'm selling at Vintage Boss Babes, for instance, are not what I know will sell at a specific market. So the other con I would say that's huge is physical labor. It involves physical labor. It's, you know, I am no spring chicken. I'm 38 years old. I'm still like healthy and active, but it definitely does not get any easier as you get older. You can always hire help. There are always people looking to dip their feet into the world of vintage. But yeah, the physical labor is fun. I'm sure, you know, having lived in New York and doing events, I'm sure you were hauling things. Yeah, very labor intensive.
All I do is haul a suitcase. So
yes, but there are pros to even the labor intensiveness of it. Like it keeps you active.
Keeps you active.
I don't have to work out. I'm lifting all the time.
It's true.
All the time. I'm walking all the time. I'm on my feet a lot. No trouble getting my steps in.
Yeah.
And also, like it is very healthy to be outside and to work outside. It really lifts your mood and your outlook just to be in that work environment. So it makes it all worth it. And the relationships that you make, like there's no better networking within the vintage world than the networking you can do at markets, for sure.
Because it's in person, and if it's a vintage market, that is your target audience to some degree. As you said, Ella, there's going to be a certain type of vintage person that walks into your booth that's different than the next type of vintage person.
Yeah.
We're about to talk about this in depth, but you know, not every market is created for the same type of vintage or the same type of goods.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do well there.
Things when you're starting to research markets is trying to figure out, like, will this market be appropriate for me? Is going to be there? So, I mean, the first thing obviously that you need to do is know who your audience is. But yeah, so what are the different types of markets? Okay.
Yeah.
There are more than this. Like, obviously, this is a very general overview. There are a few types of markets that I don't generally sell at, and I'll tell you about those and why. And then I will tell you up front that I mostly sell at local, I call them vintage and handmade markets. It's sort of hybrid of like an artisan handmade market and a vintage market. And sometimes these markets can be all only vintage vendors, but it has that kind of artisanal vibe. And they generally take place in the same place. I know here in the Midwest, it's always at a brewery. It's always at a brewery or
That's amazing. That's where the Baltimore flea market was, and I had a beer.
yeah.
It
Well,
was a brewery in an old church.
yeah, like
Loved it.
people congregate, and the best market is someplace where there's going to be foot traffic. Like there are a lot of spaces that are sort of outdoor beer garden type spaces. That's the perfect place for market. You get people drinking and they buy they buy a lot.
Amen to that.
In fact, that's one of the things that I look for when I gauge whether or not a market will be successful, whether or not there's alcohol involved. People more and more don't want to go to like an outdoor event during the day unless they're, live music, alcohol, food available on site. These are all things that impact people's, desire to go to something. But yeah, different kinds of vintage markets. So traditional flea market, it gets so confusing these days because so many markets have words like flea in the title, but they are definitely not traditional flea markets. And I would consider a traditional flea market to be someplace that I personally would rather source than vend. It has a little bit more of a garage sale vibe. You won't see as much curation. You will see like a mix of vintage and antiques. I typically don't find a ton of clothes at traditional flea markets. There's always a lot of great jewelry and like furniture goods. You can find some great stuff there, but yeah, you probably, as a vintage vendor who is hoping to sell at retail prices, a traditional flea market is not a place where you can do well with your margins. People feel much more comfortable haggling at a traditional market. I mean, there are some events that started out as traditional fleas and have become very well known even on like a national level, and I'm sure that vintage retail vendors do really well at those, but like if one of those is in your area, you already know about it. So if someone has the word flea in the title, it's always worth researching it or going to it ahead of time just to see what the vibe is. If it seems a little more garage sale-y, and it's less curated, there's not like merchandising happening in the booths, then you're probably at a flea market. And it won't necessarily be a great place to vend vintage at retail. And the other type of event that I love going to, but I don't often vend, is like a vintage show or convention. And these are like more industrial events. Just a clue, you can usually tell like they'll take place at like a state fairgrounds, convention center, some dedicated municipal event space, where, conventions and like large gatherings happen. So that's kind of a clue. Usually the word show or con, short for convention, will be in the title. And just like any market, just like, handmade and vintage markets locally, they can have different genres. So like I think of ThriftCon, which is very geared towards like teas and collectibles and Y2K versus like Manhattan Vintage Show, which I know you've vended, Sammy. And the big difference with these shows is that they don't just attract customers buying vintage for their own personal closets, they attract industry people. So they're typically going to take place in cities where there's a fashion industry presence. You're going to see costumers, designers, all sorts of people shopping there, not just people shopping for their personal closet. So they can serve really as an industry showcase for the vendors just as much as a selling opportunity. And the vendors at these events will often bring like booths full of culturally, historically significant pieces, archival, designer, museum quality pieces. Yeah. So if you don't specialize in that kind of industry or in that kind of inventory, you're unlikely to be accepted into these shows in the first place. But like, I mean, that's something that's a goal for a lot of sellers for sure, to acquire that kind of inventory. But yeah, if you're just starting out in markets, I wouldn't recommend that. There's actually a new vintage show in Nashville that just happened for the first time. Yeah, and I had a couple of friends who own brick and mortar vintage stores go to that as vendors, and they were surprised. They had never been to an industrial before. And they were surprised by a few things, but they definitely felt out of place. just because they specialize in retail vintage. And they were talking to me after. They were saying, you couldn't believe it. We saw all these thrashed, like really damaged pieces on sale for hundreds of dollars. And I was like, well, yeah, guys, it's, that piece is useful to someone in the industry, whether it's a designer who's looking for inspiration or a costumer who can reconstruct it. So it's definitely just like a different inventory vibe.
Yeah.
I don't specialize in that kind of inventory, so I don't vend those events, but they're so much fun to go to, and you can learn so much about kind of the sorts of items that constitute like the top tier level of vintage collecting and retail, and see what things sell for is pretty cool.
It's astounding. Yeah. Were those trash pieces like Edwardian and 1920s, or just like a 80s?
No, they said there were a couple of vendors who were specializing in like 70s pieces. I mean, I know some costumers, and I know that they can deconstruct something and replicate it just based on a piece, even if it's very, very thrashed. So if it's culturally significant and really emblematic of its era, you can sell it. The industry people have budgets they're working with, so they are able to pay even for those types of pieces. And the vendors at these shows know that. So really, that's a whole different corner of the industry.
Yeah.
If you just want to vend locally, just be aware, like if it's at that kind of event space, just kind of look into it more and maybe go to it first, just to make sure it's not that kind of event. Because you'll end up feeling pretty out of place. Also,
that was a great tip. So New Vintage Market in Nashville, guys. New Vintage Convention. The name? Do you know the name of it, Ella?
Huh?
I'm sorry. I think I keep talking over it. Do you know the name of the vintage convention in Nashville?
I think it was just the Nashville Vintage Show.
Oh, Nashville. Okay.
Yeah, and it was at I'm pretty sure it was at their state fairgrounds. State fairgrounds center. Yes. And I thought a little bit about pop-ups, even though they're not markets.
Yeah, we talk about pop-ups. Yeah.
When you start doing markets and when you start to be known for being a market vendor, you will start getting contacted by small businesses that want you to pop up. And the important thing to remember is just like to choose sparingly, because pop-ups require the same amount of physical labor and effort as markets, but they're less of a draw because, people are more likely to go to the event where there are 100 vintage vendors all in one place than a coffee shop where it's just you. So the most important thing to remember when choosing whether to say yes to an event like that is whether there's a built-in captive audience of constant foot traffic, because you're never going to get somebody to choose your record store pop-up as their destination for the day. So you just have to make sure that it's a place where your audience already is, where they're going to be waiting around ideally, and have time to stop at the booth. I would say concert venues are the perfect place to pop up. Concert venues, people are waiting to go in. Concert goers definitely into vintage. They're all gonna be hitting your booth before they start letting the audience in. That's definitely, I've popped up at record stores when they had an event or a live show. I've popped up at coffee shops where I knew the neighborhood was really vintage friendly. I've popped up at other people's vintage stores, and sometimes that could be great because
I've heard that's great.
Yeah, because they have, customers coming into their shop, and their customers will get to know about you too. Also, with the right local permit, you might be able to pop up in a public space. Just check it out. There's a guy I know who vends on a really high traffic walking trail near me, and it's like an area with a lot of boutiques and restaurants. He pops up every day in the weekend in the summers and makes a killing. So check it out locally. You don't always have to be doing your markets at a dedicated market, but I would definitely just pick and choose, because if you do, it's so disappointing to do a pop. It's exciting to get the offers for a pop-up, and then it's so disappointing to find that the vast majority of them at any random place are not going to have the foot traffic to make you a lot of money. So you want your labor to be worthwhile.
I think that's such an interesting point. I mean, here in New York, people pop up at Union Square, they pop up at Washington Square Park.
Station, can't even imagine.
Like, I think they get a permit. I think it's a small fee.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're always there. Like the book guy is always there. The sage guy is always there.
Oh yeah. Oh, sage guy.
Hanging the sage guy. And I'm like, one of these days I want to buy sage. I still haven't. The soap guy. The soap guy is there. I have noticed also that like what are those called? Renaissance fairs, if you could pop up there. There's like pirate fairs now. There's all of these.
You have to wait extra hard for stuff like that. But if you happen to have a lot of like flowy bohemian stuff, or chainmail.
Chainmail or just corset tops.
Corset tops, yeah. If you have anything that's vaguely Ren Fairy, they'll let you vend, and there are so many people that go to those.
So many people.
Yeah.
But I guess like what I hear you say, and we're about to move on to sort of dig into this a little bit deeper, is to think out of the box as well.
Yeah, really to think out of the box. I mean, even with like the type of event I vend at, I try to think of it as having a mix of vintage and artisan vendors, but it doesn't have to be billed as like only a vintage and artisan market. Like sometimes it's neighborhood markets, you guys. Neighborhood annual festivals are killer. And the vendors might not be the main focus. There's food, there's a bouncy house, there's a concert going on. But like if you can get into Westfest in Chicago, or even I've done a couple of neighborhood fests in Indiana and Louisville and Ohio that were just like, bam! So the entire neighborhood comes out to them. Everybody brings their kids. Teenagers get their parents to buy them something. Yeah. Everybody, they can be really great. So even if vintage is not the sole focus of the event, really thinking about what the traffic is going to be like. If it's a high traffic event with a wide variety of people, you're set.
I once did
collegiate areas.
Yeah, right. Like some sort of college, maybe when the college opens and have their like welcome activities.
Oh yes. And college usually there are a bunch of events here in the Midwest that are like sponsored by the like church affiliated with the college, but it's like a big annual event for the college. All the students are going to be there. College students love vintage. Granted, it's like they're looking for Y2K. They're looking for casual things. So make sure that you gauge, what kind of inventory you'll need and whether you specialize in that thing. But yeah, those can be really killer. I have never been mobbed so hard than like the collegiate events I've done.
That's awesome.
Yes, constant stream of traffic all night.
I mean, I love hearing that, right? Because like the thing that I think we hear often is like, oh, I did that and it wasn't worth it. There was nobody there. Like,
I've never done a big market that was like that. I've done some that I was like, well, this could have been better. The most of the events that I end up disappointed in are pop-ups that I just didn't know enough about the place where I was popping up, and I didn't know enough about the traffic. I didn't do my homework. Yeah. Or you quickly learn. As soon as you start to get to know other vendors, as soon as you go to even just one market and network with somebody, people love to talk smack about markets. And you will find out what the ones that aren't worth it are as soon as you either do one or you hear about it from someone else. And ask your vendor friends that you make, like, hey, are there any internet chat threads? Like, is there a local vendor Discord? Is there an in-person meetup? Is there a Facebook group? I am a really killer Instagram private message thread with like 70 people, and the tea is spilling all day every day. It's a constant stream of advice and or issues that people have had with coordinators, or great news about a market that was really awesome that everybody should do. So it's really helpful to get to know your fellow vendors, because they'll be brutally honest about which events are worth it, and you'll know from the get-go whether or not something is right for you.
Yeah. And this is part of the strategy, guys. We've kind of jumped ahead, so we will go back. But how do you, so Ella, like clearly, and now you're giving me even more insights into just how many markets and pop-ups you've done. How do you plan it all? How do you plan your season?
I use a Google Doc.
Can I have that link?
Oh yes, I sent you a link to it. So it's empty. So if you want to use this, just make sure you copy it first. Otherwise, everyone who has the link will be seeing what you put in it.
Yeah.
And then feel free to use it for yourself. So what I do is I have the first event, or the first tab is just like all events. And before I really start scheduling things, I just copy paste every event that I've ever heard of in there. And then I go in and do research about what the dates are. The dates are different every year. So if I did it last year, I'll put last year's date in, and then I'll just say like TBD 2023 or whatever. I have columns in there for just like the date and time of the market, what it's called, the contact. Oftentimes, once you've done a market, you'll be on their email list, so you'll have the direct email of the coordinator. You can reach them if you have questions. I'll throw a link to an application form in there. I'll throw the market's website in there. I make note of what the cost was, and that way, that's also helpful. I can see if the cost has gone up drastically since last year, and I can
right.
and I can ask myself, like, where is that money going? Are they really doing enough promotion for that cost to be worth it? So it's worth it to keep a record from year to year. So this sheet is just the one I'm using for 2023. I would have shown you guys my populated sheet, but honestly, I've been doing a terrible job of organizing it. So right now I have everything in the tab that needs to be sorted. So I was like, I can't show people this.
Yeah.
But I have different tabs for every month, and then I have a pop-ups tab as well where I organize kind of pros and cons about different pop-ups that I've done. And then if I want to do them again, I usually don't move them to the specific month until I have them scheduled. Like if you want to pop place multiple times with someone, all you need to do is reach back out to them and be like, hey, I really enjoyed popping up. If you want to have me again, they'll keep you updated. Yeah.
Great.
It's pretty simple.
How many do you try, and this is just to get a gauge of your workload, but how many do you try to do a month?
Usually I will personally do at least 3 weekends a month. Occasionally I have a couple people that I can call for help if it's a local market. I do all the traveling ones myself. Typically I'll offer someone like $100 a day, or 20% of the sale. Can often be higher. And they will come in and help me out, or they'll just work it for me. So that, you can do that, but you really have to have like a good inventory system in place and a good point of sale system and everything set up so that you can train someone how to use it. So that's all part of, I know we talk about that later and what you need to do before you vend. But yeah, you can always find local help. It's not hard to find somebody who's, again, interested in dipping their feet into the vintage scene and learning how to vend. But yeah, at least during the warmer months, at least 3 weekends, sometimes every weekend, because you can rest between. So why not? Like,
I feel you.
Yeah. And I have markets booked right now for October. There are some market circuits, especially ones that happen in different cities, that will tell you they have their schedule laid out pretty far in advance. So then you can, as you get closer to a month, you'll still have a couple of weekends free, and you can say, all right, these are reserved for local events. I know this is when this one that I loved happened last year. I'm going to keep this weekend open just in case it happens then.
I see.
The months go forward, everything kind of slots into place, but you do have things each month that you have planned pretty far in advance, especially when you're traveling. You plan your markets in different states.
It's kind of like, guys, I'm booked in October. I know it's March, but you can't invite me to anything.
I would say make part of your strategy like taking a break to. I know last year I was doing so many markets, like I had everyone who I knew that was going to get married before COVID ended up getting married in 2021. I missed some really great markets when I was at weddings, and I had to just like sit back and be like, Ella, just be excited to be with your friends. It can feel like a grind, but it can also feel like go, go, go. Like it can also be very energizing.
Yeah.
So when
Relate,
you
relate.
miss one that you know is going to be good, you're just like, oh, darn it. But yeah, I would encourage you to like build a self-care strategy and a strategy for taking a break and sitting back and enjoying time with friends into it, because you know, events that take up all your days during the weekend can kind of
Takes
yeah,
away from the
yeah,
weekend life. Yeah.
that much when you're first getting started.
Yeah.
Easy.
Wow. So let's talk. How do you curate price and merchandise for markets? And we've got this great photo. I'm just going to show it one more time. I'm blocking your face. Let me get rid of this really fast. So that's one of your setups, and I love the sandwich board.
Thank you. I realized after I sent this to you that this is an older one. Now I have a sign that at the top of my tent. So
Oh my God, on the top of your tent. If
yeah.
you can take some photos in the next few weeks so that we can see it in Boss Babes and post in Boss Babes, I think that would be great.
Thank you. Okay, so how to curate price and merchandise. Okay, so I'll just go into curating here. I have notes. I'm looking
at guys, she has notes for us.
I mean, honestly, I would how to curate and price and merchandise. You can get a lot of great ideas by just going to markets and checking out what people are selling, especially in your area. If you've only sold online before, it is really important to get out locally and see what's selling just in your town. Because especially for me, like, you know, now my market inventory is very different from what I sell online. But before, I was trying to take all my fancy stuff to markets, and, you know, people milling around in Indiana and Ohio aren't gonna buy my Cartier scarf. Like it's it's not happening. They want a sweatshirt. They want a
My
sweatshirt.
Carhartt.
They want Western stuff sells really, really well for me at markets. Anything 1970s, but on the who's been watching Daisy Jones and the Six? Anything that's that aesthetic sells really well for me at markets. True vintage before the 1960s really does not sell for me at markets. Really not even the true vintage markets that I've done have had a lot of buyers just in my area. It may not be true in your area. So the best way
nationwide.
Yeah. The best way to tell is to, you know, get out there. 80s stuff for some reason doesn't sell very well in event wear. For me, you know, sometimes things will sell better around the holidays or right before prom, and you don't really bring them to markets if it's not that season. You know what I mean? So it just takes getting out there and seeing what other people are doing, especially pricing. I would say that, you know, vintage vendors, markets, there aren't a lot of ways to like collectively organize as a labor force, and I think of pricing as a way that everyone can be in solidarity with one another. So when you first come into the market scene, the thing you don't want to do is undercut the rest of the market in your local area. So go and see what people are pricing things, categories similarly. I have heard people bad mouthing other vendors because, you know, they're doing like a rack of $20 vintage that should not be sold that low. It's setting an expectation that is not sustainable for the wider body of sellers. So like, just check it out. Make sure you're not doing something like that. And you know, you'll get to, as you go to more markets, you'll get to know like, okay, at this market, the audience is this and they really want this. Maybe, you know, if you find sourcing that kind of thing fun, even if it's not what you usually sell online, you can try out different things in different markets and see. But if that's going to be overwhelming for you, having different categories of inventory for different events, then the important thing is just to find out which events have your specific audience. And that just takes, you know, going to them and finding out and hearing and learning from other vendors which ones. Once you get to know your vendors, they will know what you do best, and they'll be able to tell you like, oh my gosh, I did this event, I think it would be really good for you. Or I don't know if your buyer is there. They'll be really honest with you about that kind of thing. So yeah. And the event too. Like if it's an event on a college campus, they're gonna want Y2K stuff.
Yeah.
Casual clothing.
If that market is so obvious, don't try
Yes.
to sell them something that they don't want.
Yeah, if it's in the hippest neighborhood in your town with a lot of like millennials, with expendable a population starting to have expendable income, bring your stuff. We like the groovy stuff. Your 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s brights, colors, prints, things like that. Jewelry does really well for me at most markets, unless I know it's a really casual, youthful market. I'll always bring a lot of brooches, earrings. They do really well. Necklaces, belts. I have a table that I just lay everything out on. Yeah, so yeah, it just depends. The only way to find out is to really go out and find it. And how to price. Also, I would say that I generally price lower than online, just because when you're posting online, you have fees, you have maybe shipping costs. You've priced your product up to even post it online already. And also, if you're doing a one-day event, the likelihood of the perfect person for any given garment coming along at the right day and time is a little lower than if you have it posted online for a month, and theoretically, at least, anyone could find it on the web, theoretically. Yeah. Whether or not they get visibility into it is another story. But it's just like, keep that in mind. I usually will price down at least 10% from what I'm selling it at online, unless it's a really special piece and I'm just like, no, this price is firm. Yeah, you'll feel better at the end of the day if you moved through more inventory. And you'll be surprised. Some people will walk in your booth and will not blink an eye. They will pay for your most expensive item. And people will be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Hard. That, as exhilarating as seeing the like happy emotions on people's faces can be, it also is kind of like to have people come in
the heart. And you're like, it's $78. Okay.
Yes. But you'll learn I don't want to do that market again because the audience is cheap, or they're just, the audience has different expectations than what you're willing to offer, and that's important information for you. There are a lot of markets where I'm comfortable just taking like a bunch of lower priced items and moving through them quickly. And I know that will be successful for me, and I'll come out at the end of the day with some money in my pocket. But others, I'm more concerned about having my very best stuff, and and making sure that I make a few, and knowing that with this audience, I will make a few higher dollar sales, maybe fewer sales over the course of the market, but people will be willing to pay more, and I'm going to bring my best there. So
right.
Yeah, that said, I kind of merchandising. Let's see.
There's a lot to it. We just started talking about just putting everything on a table for your jewelry and your belts.
Levels. You have to have levels in your booth. It doesn't draw people's eye if it's static. So I have my tall. I love doing market setup. Sarah Jo, yes, merchandising makes me happy too. I don't consider it my forte, but but I'm like, yes, it's very satisfying. I have my like 2 tall racks along the sides of the booth, and then I have my table set out. And the important thing with the table is getting levels on there. So I have like a shelf that sits on top of the table. I use cake platters that are different elevations. I'll have a little head form or like a torso form on there, just to have something that's, kind of drawing the eye.
Yeah.
Different levels. And I'll have my dress form sometimes if I think there's room for it in the tent, and I will style something on that just to I'll usually keep it at the front of the tent so that people are like, oh my God, that outfit, and then they'll come in and check everything else out. Sometimes it's hard, especially if you're in a 10 by 10. Sometimes you'll get there and you'll be like, we are so crowded together today. I can't make it look pretty. I have to fit my, pop-up try-on tent in here.
Yeah.
There's barely any room for me to sit. All right, we're just squashing it all together. Yeah. And we're not going to worry about whether it looks pretty or not. I also always try and bring a rug. Like I have an indoor outdoor rug. I think it's
Cool.
that I love. It can get wet, it can get dirty, and you can hose it off afterwards. Yeah, I would say for merchandising, like any displays or things you use aesthetically, just make sure they're functional. So it might be pretty, but it might be really hard to move, or it might be a real pain in the butt to, pack up, unpack and unpack, or load in, load out. So just, keep that in mind. Like at the end of the day, you want your sanity. No matter how good your booth looks, your sanity should be.
Yeah. And I think too, with like merchandising, which we talked about briefly, is that not everything is necessary. Like
when you start, it's very tempting to be like, oh my God, I want this
I know.
better than every other booth. And then once you've spent way too much money for that very extra setup, you get to the market and you're like, whew, that was a lot.
Yeah, just to get it set up and then to break it down and to fit it back in your car. And
yes. That said, like I've seen people do some really fun things with their booth, especially if they use a larger space. And I do know I have some vendor friends that always do like 10 by 20 or 20 by 20, and they say it pays for themselves. But of course, you have to have a way to transport that much stuff. You have to have your bigger vehicle, more storage space, more money poured into your fixtures and things. So it's just, something to think about. Everything you buy for the markets to use is going to be an energetic
labor,
not just a monetary, an energetic expenditure.
I love that. Yeah. It's like, do I feel like breaking this down and setting this up for 20 minutes when I know that I'm only going to have 40 minutes to set up because I might be late, which is just what happens.
I mean, as you go to more, you'll see what other people have done. And in my case, when I first started doing markets, I saw what other people were doing, and I was like, wow, that didn't take them very long at all.
Yeah. And you're like, I need to get there. Yeah.
You'll get ideas from other people.
I was going to say, I remember I used to vend at the Brooklyn Flea, and I had this freaking beautiful mirror. It was a stand-up mirror.
Oh, mirrors.
Yeah, it was a stand-up mirror, and it was metal. So it was like really hard to break. It never broke, but it must have been 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And I would put it on top, on top of all the clothes, whatever, in my Toyota Camry, my 99 Toyota Camry. May she rest in peace. I guess it would be sticking into my, it would be like between the front seats. Oh my God. And I would carry that thing. But like, ironically, the other vendors, like they didn't have that. So they'd ask me if like their customers could use it. So like their customers.
Yeah. That's
here, and I'd be like, hey, come
over
here when you're done. Because I lifted 30 pounds across the parking lot.
I have a friend who bought what was it? It was like a big plastic mushroom stool, and she was like, this is going in front of the tent, it's going to draw people in. Yeah, it drew people in to sit on that thing. It constantly just people sitting there blocking the entrance to her. After 2 markets of having it, she was just like, never again. Now it sits in her living room. So just, there's always for every great idea there's always some customer behavior that will make it not worth it, or you're constantly worried about it getting wrecked in transport, and the worry is just not worth it. I actually, when I started out, I glued a bunch of faux daisies to the frame of my mirror, and it was the cutest thing ever, and they were constantly falling off all the time, and I was constantly having to re-glue them. So now I just have a plain mirror.
Sorry, basic.
It was like $15. It can break all at once. I'll just replace it. Yeah, you learn.
Wow. Yeah, you kind of learn like, okay, this frill is worth it and this frill isn't.
Yep.
Wow.
not going to ultimately lead to more sales. I think about the bottom line. Like, is this cool extra thing that's going to cost me time and money and energy? Is it
Right.
going to more sales or no?
What's most important is that you have the right things to sell. Like, there was this person at the Manhattan Vintage Show, and bless their hearts, I mean, their setup was incredible. They like had pink on the ground, and like they had built walls, and it was like all pink, and it felt like there might have been a chandelier happening. Like, I don't know how they did it. But it
Yeah.
was very slim pickings for the inventory. And I just remember, like, again, like you said about customer behavior, I walked by, like, there's no one in there, and I'm just kind of gawking at it, but I didn't go in.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes
Like,
yeah, sometimes you'll just get gawkers, and sometimes it's not worth it to have gawkers because because they're keeping the flow of traffic from finding your booth.
yeah. Or people decide, like, oh, well, that's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if your booth has
Yeah.
such a specific aesthetic,
Yeah.
your inventory is, sometimes people will just be like, no.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to pass on that. Yeah. Versus like, no, this is, I welcome everybody. But people just make their own laser decision because we all judge.
They do.
Yeah. So, what are some of these important things to prepare for market season? And we've already started to talk about costs.
Yes.
Let's talk about some more costs.
So upfront costs, definitely, I said, like, it's very, very necessary to brand. The time to brand is before you start doing markets at all. The time to get your online presence in order, and that it, not without cost, is before you start doing markets at all. So you can have some place to send people so they become return buyers. And also, just like the necessity of an online presence, most markets, when you go to fill out the application, they ask you for a website or a social link, or whatever you have, so that they can tell you're legit and that you fit with the vibe of your market. Either if it's a market, that's especially important, but even for market applications where it's not juried, it's kind of first come first serve, they'll still ask you to provide that information, and it's so that they can help share you and promote you and say, hey, she's going to be here. So it's very necessary to have like a landing place on social and on the web, even if it's just a link tree. I just have a link tree, guys.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'll go find it right now. I'll put it.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It has all my links. It's not anything that's crazy, but it does the trick.
Yeah.
All that market coordinators need to see is that you're active and they get a sense of what you have to offer. That's what they want to know, especially for the juried market. So if you have a social but you haven't ever posted anything on there, now's the time. Just make sure your online presence has a vibe, any vibe.
Yeah. so that you're approved, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. I would really recommend that you have like solid business systems in place before doing markets. Like, please have your bookkeeping automated. Please have a means of keeping track of inventory and sales. Sometimes you are required for markets to have business insurance. I think it's very necessary, and I'll tell you why. I have seen some crazy stuff. I have seen entire tents blow 5 blocks away and nearly impale someone in the process. I have seen tables of breakables come crashing down. I have seen a mirror fall on a child. Yes. Wow. So many things can happen. People are clumsy. They don't watch their kids when they're shopping. They, wind, sudden gusts of wind, can come out of nowhere. I was in Louisville last weekend for my first outdoor market of the year. It was beautiful out, and all of a sudden this insane gust of wind comes along out of nowhere. It wasn't even windy. 2 tents blew away. Mine had sandbags. Mm-hmm. So, but even with the weight weighing it down, everything in my tent shifted like to the left. It was crazy. Like, you won't believe it until it happens to you. And it's like this moment of collective panic, but it happens. And so you do need to have liability insurance, because your tent might blow away and impale someone. Legit.
And that would be horrible.
So like generally you need just like general commercial insurance is what you really need. But if you're going to do markets, I recommend just getting comprehensive business insurance because, especially for me when I'm traveling to markets, it covers me, other people, my inventory, and my business assets, all of my stuff for markets. It covers all of that wherever I go, whether it's out of state, whether it's like I store my entire market set up in my car year round. So if someone stole my car and all of that was lost, it's insured. If I'm doing a market that's multiple days and is outdoors and you're bunkering it down at night, if nobody ever would because but if somebody were to undo all my many tarps and bungee cords and steal my stuff, it's insured. Usually when a market doesn't require insurance, it's on private property, like it's at that brewery or something, and the brewery has liability insurance for anyone who's on their property. So you're covered, but like I just saw a tent blow into the street opposite of the property where I was vending. It happened. And if that happens and it were to hurt someone or if it were to cause a car wreck, you would probably be liable because you're off that private property where that insurance covers you. So just make sure you have it. Don't go without it. It's super cheap. Like I have the most comprehensive business. I probably have too much insurance.
I love hearing this.
Yes, like I think I have like $200,000 of coverage just for like my inventory and assets alone, and I don't think they're worth that much, but I have it and it's only $50 a month, so there's really no excuse.
Yeah.
You really must have it. I've seen some crazy things go down, and it's it's never happened to me. I try and check like the wind and really prepare for it, and if it's if the forecast is windy, I maybe don't put out my jewelry. Or I have like water jugs that attach to my tent legs, and I have sandbags, so sometimes I'll do both. Yeah, so that's just, insurance. You need it. I would say, theft too.
Yeah, totally.
Doing markets, I have not seen a ton of theft. There was only one time that I know for sure someone stole from me, and it was like this really old lady.
Oh,
I know. I can laugh about it afterwards. But especially during like high volume market where you just can't keep eyes on anything and you think you can. You think like, oh, 10 by 10 is not a lot of space to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
It might as well be an entire kingdom. And if there are so many people in your booth that
they're covering other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're checking out other people and you can't constantly keep an eye on everything. I have like a little dummy camera that sometimes if it's a super busy market, I'll put out. And I can activate it if I really think it's a market where I need to like, but I try not to, I don't want to have it out just like at markets with regular traffic because I don't want it to like alienate someone and feel like there's a camera on them at all times. But if it's a huge high volume market, I do put it out even if it's not on. And heard a lot of people who maybe were thinking about it. But yeah, I really haven't seen it generally. There are just so many people around. There's so much of a risk that someone would see you stealing, and most of these events do have security that can be called.
Yeah. Well, at the Manhattan Vintage Show, there was a ring of people who came through and stole multiple items. Yeah, it was like an older man with like a backup. So they had like a whole sort of facade going where you wouldn't have, pinned them as like thieves. But yeah, they stole like 2 diamond rings. But they were caught.
It'll happen. And those rings were insured. You better believe it.
Hope so.
Oh, I can't do Manhattan Vintage without being fully insured. Too many, because your inventory that's expensive inventory. To even get into that show, you're an expensive operation.
Yeah, this is like really great advice because you don't, again, you're all like, oh, I want to do this and I'm just romanticizing it. And then it's like, actually, there's some like serious things. So, well, I live in a city, but when I was vending, I kept my clothes in my car too, but my car was broken into twice.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
So I learned where to replace my window for $100, which was like the life lesson, but yeah, it's just devastating. You're like, and like really nothing was taken because there was nothing of value. It's just,
But still, yeah. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
that's
Yes,
okay.
but if it is to know that you're covered.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So how about, just like really quickly with fees, when do you we talked about this with your spreadsheet, but I know for a fact like some shows are $1,000 for the weekend, some markets are $100, some are 50, some are 150.
oh yeah.
How do you sort of gauge the
Well,
ROI? Like how do you know when it's too much to invest in a market?
pretty much the same metrics I use to like determine whether a market is right for me help me determine whether the price is worth it. Um, because yeah, just making sure if you know 100% that your audience is going to be there and
Yeah.
that it's going to be high volume of exactly your audience, do it. Pay whatever. You're going to make it back and then some. You're going to make a profit. But if you're trying something new for the first time, or if you're like, oh, I'm going to try selling to this audience and I think that they'll be here, I would, definitely check it out in person before you pay, or consult other vendors and see what if they think it was worth it. The best market that I did last year cost $25. So what it costs is not an indication of how great it will be.
Yeah, huge tip.
Yeah, some like, neighborhood festivals and things like that will have a significantly lower cost. I also do like a couple of market circuits where it's a series of markets that happens in different cities and different states around the country. And there's one that I have a vendor pass for this year, so it was really low overhead, but typically it's $100 a day. And I did see that they've just raised it to like $150 a day for some of these markets. So occasionally I'll do a market with them that's a flop, and then that's really disappointing. So with that kind of thing, I kind of think of like, what is my overall experience with them been? Like, there have been very few flops. One is disappointing in the moment, but overall, I'm going to stick with this coordinator because I know that I do make money at most of their events. Mm-hmm. I know. I'll also I'll look really hard at how well the organizers promote things. Like the to find out about markets in the first place is follow all of the markets in your area and follow the people who coordinate them. Because once you follow them, you'll be able to see whether they're running ads on social. If you follow them, pop up for you.
So is that a hot tip? You follow the coordinator? Well,
yeah.
No, you follow the Instagram handle.
Yeah, if you follow
the market
handle and they're running it's good to see that they're running ads. Like I feel very reassured when like I follow a market and I'm like, all right, I'm doing it. And then I constantly see up right at my feet. I'm like,
we're about to start running ads.
Ooh, excellent.
Yeah. Oh God, it's going to be so much money, but I've decided to do it. Anyway, yeah, ads.
So yeah, that's a big way. And you'll see, the ones that locally, the people that do a really great job of promoting, I'll walk into a coffee shop and I'll see their flyers. They will offer to give flyers to vendors to pass out if they want to, but they won't. The other important thing is that they don't seem like they're putting the onus on vendors to do all the promoting. Some markets will sort of feel like they're pushing the responsibility for promotion onto you. And if that's the case, think about that. Mm-hmm. So, there can be a mix. Like they can ask if you're interested in passing out flyers, and if they're willing to provide them to you, I think that's a good sign. They're willing to let the vendors get involved. But if that seems like the only thing they're doing for promotions is trying to get you to promote it for them. Yeah. And that, even sometimes when that happens, the market can be great, but really it's just a mix of things. And I would say again, location, really high traffic location. You just know that there are always people there. Maybe it will be worth the price if it's a little bit of a higher price, but in some cases the only way to find out is to do it.
Sometimes that's the case.
Yeah. So I gauge whether or not you're ready to pay that much, whether or not you have the cash flow, whether or not what is your personal comfort level with paying that amount. Like I did pay $1,000 to do a market last holiday season, and I didn't end up loving it. So, but it was one I hadn't done before. but I got great feedback about it from other vendors ahead of time. It seemed to check out. So in some ways, you just never know until you do it. But there are very few markets that I've been to where I was like, I didn't even make my booth feedback.
Oh, that's good.
I've heard horror stories like that, but that has never happened personally. Vintage it sells itself.
I mean, that's a great segue, right? Yeah. So how do you, because I did hear you say like you'll stick with a market that's a reoccurring market because you know that every few you'll do really, really, really well, and then some might be so-so and one might be low. So how do you mentally just keep yourself afloat, right? Where you're like, I wanted to make 700 today, but you made 385.
It's funny because some of really low traffic or low sales days can also be really good days, because if nobody's in your booth, you have the chance to network. And I've made some of my best vendor friends on days when there was nothing.
Oh, okay.
Like we were all just kind of sitting around commiserating. Like it's a time to do something. There's always something to do at a market. You can use the time to create social content. One time I was at this market that was just dead, and it was just mysterious. There must have been something else going on in town that everybody was at that and not this.
Yeah.
We all decided to go live together, and one of my friends who has a Facebook page went live, and she featured all of us, and we were able to share the video afterwards. And when it's dead, I like to go around and maybe say like, can I take video of your booth? I'll shout you out on social, and you can meet people that way. And just use the time wisely. No matter how few people there are, the few people that are there, if they just see you sitting around on your phone, it's not going to help you make more sales.
So true.
Sure.
That's so true. Yeah. Because like when you get in that negative headspace, you have to like unspiral yourself from it so that your energy can bring in whoever is still there. But the best markets are the busy markets, because the people that are there shopping are like,
they're so excited. They come in, they pick what you ask, no questions asked.
Yeah.
But on those days, like the sales are great and you feel really great afterwards, but you're also like, oh, I get to say hi to my friends.
Right, because you're just so busy.
Yeah.
Wow. So I feel like I'm gonna skip ahead just because I can't believe it. It's 8:15. We have Alicia of Laguna Beach Vintage. She's going live tonight at 9, but she'll actually probably be live at 8:45. So I want to get us off in the next few minutes, but I'm going to ask my last question, and it's a really specific one because I just think of the setup process. I just think of like back to what you were saying about traveling long distances. You're like on the road, you think you're going to arrive, and then you're half an hour late and you've got half an hour less to set up. So like, how have you, we've talked about some of the frill stuff, but do you have any other time-saving hacks? Even how you set up your car?
Everything the car is like a fine game of Tetris. I would definitely.
You tell me. I love it.
It's like it's not a time saver. It will save you time in the long run. Do a rehearsal. Get out on your driveway with some chalk. Measure 10 by 10 square. Set up all your stuff.
Set up your ish. Yep.
Set up your ish. And time yourself. Take stock of how long it takes, and then down there. If there's something that takes too long and you're just like, life's short, I don't have the time for this thing, cut it. Do exactly what they do in rehearsals for a play. Cut it. Edit your setup. Make sure when you're buying everything if you buy any rack ever, make sure it collapses. For God's sake, make sure it collapses. Unless you have a great huge vehicle. A lot of vendors I know have, high top cargo or a trailer hitch, and they can just put a ramp out the back and roll their racks down ready to go. But if
life goals.
Yeah, life goals. Like I use blue moving bags, like heavy duty moving bags, and they're pretty wide. They can strap to your back. I have a really great collapsible rack, and I think it's the exact rack that you showed. I have several of those. It collapses completely to lay flat in the car. It holds 400 pounds, and I do have a dock where I'm putting links to like all my market I just didn't finish it in time, you guys, because I was like going back through my emails, looking for emails from like several years ago for things I bought. I will send it to Sammy so she can post it and pin it in the group. And hopefully it'll be a good resource. And I'll put a list too of all the other stuff to have in place before the market so that you can have kind of like a cheat sheet. But yeah, those racks are amazing, and I'll put the link to them in there, but they are the exact ones that you shared, Tammy. And I love using them as a dolly. They're perfect to use as like a luggage rack. I'll put all my bins of supplies on there first, and then I'll stack my blue moving bags of
that's right.
top of those. It holds so much weight, and you can just roll it into the market and not have to carry anything in. So those, like, I have a round rack that collapses, and I've only ever been able to find one of those from Store Supply Plus. Most round racks are really bulky. Mine snap flat. Yeah. It's perfect. Oh, excuse me. I have a mirror with a stand that folds flat. Everything kind of slots into the car nicely, but I'll try and take a picture.
Yes, we need photos of your setup.
It really is like it all Tetris is in perfectly, and in
your car, Take a photo of like how it's set up in your car.
I would definitely rehearse putting together your entire setup, all your merchandising, all your displays, and then packing it away into your car. Because if you've never done that before your market, it's going to take you forever to load out, because you'll put something in and then you'll realize, oh gosh, no, that fits better over here. That other thing isn't going to fit in if I put that there. Do it ahead of time. It's going to save you more time in the long run. Even if you're like, I don't want to spend a day doing this, and it will take you an entire day. It will, it will save you a lot of grief when you set up and it's not what you want, or you brought too much or something.
Yeah.
Not enough.
Not enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely that is a time-saving hack, although it doesn't seem like it at first.
No, it's genius.
Yeah. And I would say, think of storage, think out of the box with storage solutions too. Like, I use a lot of vintage suitcases that clasp shut, and I'll just I have my discount bin in a vintage suitcase. I keep all my jewelry in a vintage suitcase, open it up, set it all out. When the end of the day comes, I just put it at the edge of the table and zoop everything in. It's not so that it's really, easy to just put things back in there. Some people I know have really great adaptive vehicles. They have crazy, storage solutions that they've custom built into their vehicles. Again, dream. But while you're doing it, I also know people that are really prolific vintage vendors that keep their setup really simple and can fit it into their passenger car. So it's really not necessary to have a huge vehicle. I have a Dodge Caravan, and the seats disappear into the floor, which is very nice. And everything fits in there for a 10x10 setup. I have done a 10x20, 20x20 setup a couple of times when that was the only option. And I was barely able to make it into a Dodge Caravan. So that gives you an idea of how much space you'll need in your vehicle.
Yeah.
But people that I know, and some people swear by keeping it simple at markets, and they'll say I only have one rack and it's not full to the brim. Sometimes I think it just depends on the kind of product you have and your audience, but sometimes, especially the people I know who do really specialty stuff, they'll be 5 caftans on a rack, and that's it. That's my market setup, and they sell them all.
Also goals, but not possible.
You have higher price inventory, and each piece is really a showcase. That's something that you can get away with.
Yes, absolutely. Especially if you're making handbags, you might only bring 12.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think people expect you to have an entire retail store in your booth. Sometimes it feels like I do. But
sure.
Yeah, and sometimes it is less overwhelming for people to have a less is more approach. But at the same time, if your booth feels too empty, you'll know it. You'll be able to gauge, and the only way to do that is by doing your setup ahead of time and just saying, okay, here's what I need. And once you do that too, you'll know exactly how much inventory you need. You'll know the hanger count for all your racks. All right.
Right.
When you're getting
hangers is on a rack,
you're all right, I need so many hangers, and that's how many items I need to price. It becomes easy once you, practice your setup a couple times and do a couple of markets. Then, and I would just like, if you have trouble with that kind of thing, keep it all in a document somewhere. When you rehearse, say like, such and such rack, um, needs such and such how many hangers. And just keep that doc handy when you're prepping for your market. Definitely the time-saving hack. I have a notes section in my market planning doc. And so year over year, I can go back and see what I thought about each market afterwards, so that I can, so that I'm not constantly just like, oh my gosh, I can't remember that one. Was it worth it? Because once you do enough, you'll be like, oh, which one was that?
I have a time-saving hack that you do that I noticed. So guys, when Ella has a live sale with us, she's showing inventory a lot of the times that she has brought to a market and it's not sold. And when she tags her inventory for the market, she puts the price and she puts the measurements. I know she lowers the price for us, but she's still got all the measurements right there. So she's going live and there's all her information. And that's why Ella is so successful, because she can blow through her pieces without, I'm a great example. Okay, guys, I'm going to measure it right here live. Okay, guys, I have a notebook. Okay, which one was that again? Been there, done that so many times. So it's a really great sales funnel, actually. Like, I really admire that about you, in that if it doesn't sell at the market, then you have Vintage Boss Babes and everything's already prepared.
Well, that's the ultimate time-saving hack, actually, is like everything goes, either it first goes to live sale or it first goes to market. And then sometimes after one or the other, it will go to the other. But the very last place it goes is online, because that's the place that takes the most time to live. And the most,
like 20 to 30%.
If you can sell at a market or at a live sale, it's going to cost you less to sell, and it's going to take less time to sell, because you're not writing those listings and cross-posting. And so the things that don't sell anywhere else end up going online. There's still great things. It's just, it's completely possible for really great pieces to not find their forever home at a live sale or a market. It happens, and I have, everything listed online of mine I love, and it just hasn't sold for one reason or another. But I like that sales funnel, because the things that can sell cheaply and without a lot of upfront time spent do.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the stuff that needs to find a special place online, I'm able to put my time and energy into it. But I know some people who like list everything online, and then they like, I straight up, when I source something, I'll take a crappy picture of it, and that's the picture that I have for that item in my inventory system.
Yeah.
And that's the only picture I have in my inventory system, because it'll sell at a market. And sometimes I'll go back in and I'll be like, oh, okay, I have to take good photos of this in order to list it online. But I don't spend that time on it until I absolutely know that it's going online.
That's great. And on that note, guys, well, first I want to say thank you to Ella for all of your time.
Yeah, this is so fun.
That was, I learned so much, and you were right. I know you could talk for 3 hours.
I really could. There's so much more. I'll put it in the document.
That a flea market podcast. I say flea market, but like, a market podcast.
That would be fun, actually. That would be a lot of fun. Thank you, Sarah Jo. I appreciate it.
Sarah Jo. So Ella, we had briefly spoken about, which is above and beyond. So if you get it to us, if you don't, no worries. Some sort of like, hey, here's some suggested things to buy that are a priority, and then here's some things that are, next in line. So I will get that to you guys. I'll use the dreaded everyone tag, thank me later, so that you have access to that. And I hope that next time Ella goes live, that you tune in. And I hope that if you're in the Midwest, I wish I were, that you can visit her in person.
Yes.
At a market.
I'm going to be in Louisville next weekend if it doesn't get rained out. Oh, thank you, Sarah Jo. And then after that, where am I going after that? I think I'm going to be in Cincinnati at one point in April.
Oh,
so
cool. Ohio.
Let me know. I'll
post your markets. I don't see people do that in the group. I'm always telling them, like, if you guys are a registered seller, you can like
Oh,
let us know that you're doing stuff in person. I just don't think it translates.
I will start doing that. I knew you could. For some reason, I just.
You don't know who's in the group that's gonna be like, oh my God, Ella, I'm gonna come see you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then like someone shows up and they're like, I know you. And you're like, oh, hi.
That's the most fun, you guys. Meeting people
Yeah.
only known online.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah, it's a joy. We had I had a boss babe come visit me yesterday in Williamsburg, and it was adorable.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So yeah. So guys, this will be this is at this point if you're watching a replay. If you would like more of these Q&A informative sessions and you think you can contribute one, feel free to reach out. So yeah, on that note, Ella, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sammy.
And we'll see you guys live again in about 2 minutes for Aisha Marie Glass's farewell sale, which is crazy. She's going to do a 2-hour live sale starting at 9 p.m. EST. So we will see you guys then. Thank you again, Ella. Bye.